Don't got those fantasy football lineups set yet? No worries. Dave Richard helps you now.
Fantasy Friday, fool!
It's time for fantasy football.
Are you kidding me?
It's time for fantasy football.
He's our fantasy football cheat code. It's time to set your lineups with CBS Sports Dave Richard.
That's right. It's that time on this Friday. Jason Ross, Jay Mars, Carmichael Dave is off today, but he's never off. He's always with us. That is Dave Richard. He is ready to help us all out, one and all. Dave, happy Friday. How are you?
Happy Friday to you, gentlemen. And I'll tell you what, that intro was amazing. It is not lost on me. I've never heard that intro before when I've come on with Dave, and I've been on the air with Dave for maybe a decade.
Yes.
And so, like, the one time he's not around, you've got this intro. It just tells me who wears the pants on this show.
That's exactly.
And, I think I got to start talking to you guys more and a lot less to Dave.
We all agree.
All I will say is thank you, Dave, and those pants are a 34-30.
I'm gonna start here with you, Dave.
Sorry,
Richard.
Jason, too much info.
Yeah, it was a little too much info, but I was just picturing the whole dynamic there. Anyway, Dave, professional question on this realm. I was telling Jay here before we went to break. I'm in 3 leagues. I went 0 for 3. I'm not too bitter about that. Anyway, where do you stand on just the way leagues are run? Because personally, we all know this could happen. Hey, I went against head-to-head, the highest score in the league, and lost. I was going to lose to beat everybody else, and that, so on and so forth. Do you prefer head-to-head or overall point totals? What is your ideal run fantasy league?
Oh, head-to-head is way more fun, especially when you're playing against somebody who you got to beat, your brother, a cousin, a coworker, especially like a coworker that you don't really like. You end up getting into like you guys against Dave. Like,
yes,
I know you guys love Dave. Everybody does, but me. And when you play him in fantasy, don't you want to just a little extra motivation to make all the right moves in your lineup so you can kick his tush?
Absolutely.
I think that that's what it's all about for me. Whereas if you play with this total point stuff, okay, I hope I outscore Dave this week, but it's not the same feel. And so I'm a big fan of head-to-head. And with that comes the potential of I might score the second most points of the week. And this happened to me just this past week. But I'll run into the team that scored the most points. And that stinks.
Yep.
But it also happens where you score the second lowest point in the league one week, and you play the team that scored the lowest points, and you win. So it swings both ways. You accept that as a fantasy manager, and you love the head-to-head.
Dave Richard from CBS Sports joining us. Dave, I want to go look at the Rams real quick. Not a good game for Matt Stafford last week. We only saw 3 carries out of Cam Akers, 1 reception for Allen Robinson. What's going to be up with the Rams this weekend?
I'm expecting a nice bounce back overall for the Rams, but the same issues that they had in that game, Jay, they're going to have it again this week. The offensive line, big question mark. They lost center Brian Allen. He's not going to play anytime in the next 4 weeks. It's just an easier matchup. That Bills defense is really good. Their pass rush is really good. Now they've got the Falcons pass rush, not nearly as good. I think that defense is beatable. I think the Rams scheme around their problems a little bit more. And I think what they need to do with Allen Robinson is A, throw him the ball more, and B, shorten his routes. Let him be more of an intermediate and short area target. Let him make those plays, those contested catches. He was still getting open. I think they've got to lean on him for that. So you look for him to get maybe 5-6 catches this week, and I think he'll be fine. He's got a chance to score a touchdown. Use him as at least a flex in fantasy. Cam Akers is the one that I think you just can't trust. And I think trust is the issue right now between Akers and Stafford and Akers and McVay. The fact that he blew a pass protection assignment last week, the fact that he doesn't look efficient as a runner. I'm nervous to use him in fantasy until I start to see him develop and play a little bit better. And then once that happens, you're going to see McVay hit the accelerator and go right to Akers. But I'm not sure if that happens, much less when that happens, which is why Darrell Henderson is a start for me as a top 15 running back this week.
Yeah. Dave Richard joining us again. You have questions, 916-339-1140. You can text them in there. Dave, 49ers lost the game. Didn't look that dynamic offensively. Lose Elijah Mitchell. I know you rank each position. Who are the highest ranked Niners as maybe I would say must plays or must sits this week?
The highest ranked wide receiver is Deebo Samuel. The highest ranked running back is Deebo Samuel. The highest ranked 49ers player is Deebo Samuel. Yeah. Look, he's going to be a huge part of this offense now. without Elijah Mitchell there. And the proof of that was last year. The proof of that is what happened in week 1. But I kind of want to give the 49ers a pass for everything that happened in that game. There was rain, the field conditions were terrible, and they were especially bad in the fourth quarter. And that's when this offense looked at its worst, was then, because there was no Mitchell. Everybody was getting moved around, and Trey Lance couldn't complete a pass if there was no defense there. It was that bad. I think Lance made some good decisions with the football. He missed a couple of targets. The throw to Tyler Kroft when he was wide open, that's the glaring example. But he also made a lot of nice throws. The deep catch to Brandon Ayuk was a great play. If the conditions were great this week in San Francisco, I'd kind of start Trey Lance. I kind of like the matchup a lot more. It's a great spot for the 49ers because the Seahawks played on Monday. It was an emotional victory for them. They played 66 snaps on defense. They lost Jamal Adams, and now they're on the road on a short week. But the forecast says rain on Sunday, guys. Yeah. You got to get to the beach on Saturday, I guess, if you want to salvage your weekend. But if it's going to rain all over again in San Francisco, or Santa Clara, I should say, on Sunday, then it puts a damper, literally, on the expectations for everybody outside of Deebo Samuel. Look for Jeff Wilson to have a pretty good game. Still available on the waiver wire in a handful of leagues, but he's the one who will benefit the most from what's going on with the Seahawks defense coming into the game.
CBS Sports' Dave Richard joining us. Dave, obviously Dak Prescott going down for the Cowboys, a huge deal. How do you see that impacting the overall offense and the fantasy players that most teams or most guys have on inside their teams?
It's the biggest problem the Cowboys offense has, but the second biggest is that they lost yet another starting offensive lineman. That's 2 now to begin the season, and that doesn't count losing Lyle Collins this offseason. So they're really in dire straits on that line. And they're taking on a Bengals defense that pleasantly surprised me against the Steelers in week 1. I think you got to be nervous about everybody in Dallas right now. Cooper Rush is going to probably get a lot of easy throws, scheme them up a little bit, and hopefully he targets a lot of CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz. Those guys you'll start without much fanfare. I think they're like, you downgrade expectations for both of them, but they're both starters. That's really what I should have said. Ezekiel Elliott, we're definitely downgrading expectations for him. Don't love the matchup for him. He's a flex at best, and Pollard's got to sit on the bench for a while. Cooper Rush, a low-end play in 2 quarterback leagues.
Dave, a couple from our text line. Start or sit, Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb?
So this is a great example. I think that CeeDee Lamb in PPR is probably a better start than Jerry Jeudy, but I think it's close between those two. So I'll go with Lamb, but I wouldn't blame you for going with Jeudy because his speed was obvious against Seattle, and so he could get any kind of slant pass over the middle and potentially take it to the house, and it's an easier matchup for him against Houston. I'm just expecting volume to be there for Lamb. But in a non-PPR league, I think you can make the case for Jeudy. It really just depends on your scoring.
Well, this may help the next question we got. In a PPR league, need 2 wide receivers. They've got CeeDee Lamb, Michael Thomas, Ayuk, DJ Chark, or Allen Robinson. So 2 of those. I'm going
to stick with Lamb here too, and I'll pair him with DJ Moore. And I know Moore was a big disappointment, and people are freaking out about it. Don't do that. He's going to bounce back and have a good game. It could come this week. It might happen next week for him. So keep DJ Moore in lineups, and I think CeeDee Lamb in this case is better. I would trust him ahead of Allen Robinson.
Dave, are you seeing a huge weekend for Raiders receivers, namely Waller and Adams?
Yeah, pretty much. The Cardinals' defense was one we identified before the season as being on the downside. Not only did they, have all kinds of issues at cornerback, but they lost their best pass rusher. Chandler Jones now on the team that they're going to play in the Raiders. This is a great matchup for the Raiders, and I would expect Derek Carr to have a big game. You're starting Adams, you're starting Waller. Even Hunter Renfrow should get in on the action. I don't mind him as a PPR flex play, and Josh Jacobs should get more carries and do just as well with them as he did in week 1. Just gets more volume with it in this matchup against Arizona in week 2.
Is there a player on your quarterback, running back, receiver list that is abnormally high ranked this week? Like you go, hey, if you've got this one, maybe you never play them, this is the week to play him.
So Derek Carr would be one of those guys for me at quarterback. Carson Wentz would be another. Both of them ranked ahead of Tom Brady. Because we don't know who's going to be healthy for Tom Brady to throw to. And the matchup against New Orleans has been a nightmare for him, and his offensive line is going through some issues. So Brady's somebody that I'm trying to get away from him a little bit. I think that he's going to be somebody who struggles. And then running back, kind of the same thing. I mentioned Darrell Henderson. He's a top 15 player for me. People drafted Miles Sanders outside of the first 5 rounds. He's a top 20 running back for me this week. Cordero Patterson, I think a tough matchup against the Rams. I think he keeps it hot this week. And then you didn't ask about tight ends, but I'm going to sprinkle them in. Logan Thomas is available in, I want to say 40 or so percent of CBS Sports leagues. That probably means he's even more available on other websites. Love that he played 60% of the snaps in his first game back. He wasn't even practicing 3 weeks ago. Now here he is being a factor for the Commanders' offense. And Carson Wentz has a very detailed track record of leaning on his tight ends and leaning on his big body targets. Thomas is going to be that guy. He's taking on the Lions this week. I am stashing Logan Thomas, tight end, for the Washington Commanders in as many leagues as I possibly can.
It's great info each and every Friday, 7:30. We get Dave Richard. Dave, after this, where else can people find you?
I'm going to be on CBS Sports HQ starting at 9 a.m. your time, going over the slate in week 5. Did I just say week 5? I don't know why I said week 5.
Well, you will at some point.
What week is it, guys? I lose track of it. It's week 2. We're going to go through the entire matchup. We've got start sits for every game that's left in week 2 and in week 5. Not just kidding. It's week 2. DFS plays, player props. Who better than fantasy guys to tell you who to use in player props to help you win a little extra money to help pay for those fantasy leagues that you got into? It starts at 9 a.m. It's on CBSSportsHQ.com. The name of the show, Fantasy Football Today. You'll watch it. You'll love it.
Awesome. Dave, we appreciate it each and every week. We'll talk to you next Friday.
Thanks, Dave.
You got it, guys. Good luck in your leagues.
All right. Thank you. That's the great Dave Richard.